Senator Dillon, what say you about the rigmarole and how Yekeh was expelled? Whether he's expelled, why the justice in chamber is not making any decision? Help us understand. Where are you with this Yekeh situation, sir?
Well, the House of Representatives, like the Senate, has authority, constitutional authority, to discipline one of its own, including myself as a senator. But there are laid down rules to follow. In disciplining a lawmaker, the reliance is Article 38. Article 38 of the Constitution says, each house shall adopt its own rules of procedure, enforce order, and with the concurrence of 2/3 of the entire membership, may expel a member for cause. Each house shall establish its own committees and subcommittees, provided, however, that the committees on revenues and appropriation shall consist of one member from each county. Now, here is where I want to emphasize. All rules adopted by the legislature shall conform to the requirements of due process of law laid down in this Constitution. The source of the authority of the legislature, each of the houses, to adopt their own rules is Article 38. But Article 38 gives a huge caveat what that rule must contain and how to apply the rule. All rules adopted by the legislature shall conform to the requirements of due process of law laid down in this Constitution. The due process is not the one laid down in the rules of the House. The due process is not the due process laid down in the rules of the Senate. Due process is not the due process laid down at the Election Commission during electoral issues, during hearing of electoral issues. Due process of law is not the due process laid down at the Labor Ministry during labor-related hearing issues. Due process of law is due process of law laid down in this Constitution. And the only authority that can interpret what a due process will satisfy is the Supreme Court of Liberia, in keeping with Article 65 and 66 of the Constitution of Liberia. So in the exercise of the authority to expel a member, once the member is suggesting that due process will not follow and runs to the court, and the court says, stay further proceeding until we review what our due process is being followed. Once you ignore that, that's problem. The House can say we have our own rule for due process. No, the Senate can say we use our own due process. That due process, it must conform to the requirements of due process laid down in this Constitution. And once that due process is not as required by the Constitution, the only authority of the three branches of government that can say it is so or not is the Supreme Court of Liberia. And when we respect the rule of law, governing under the rule of law, when the court speaks, whether we like it or not, we are under obligation to abide. That is why the House of Representatives has not smartly declared a vacancy to the Elections Commission, even though almost 30 days or a little over 30 days has passed since they took an action to expel Yekeh. I want to make it clear I did not come here on this topic in defense of Yekeh. For me, it is my business as a national leader for us to always be law-abiding. The law will not always favor us, but the law is the law.